If you've played Empire at War for a long time, especially in base game, you're possibly familiar with this feature. If you have Obi-Wan and Darth Vader in a battle and they find each other, they'll start dueling with special animations. This is called a hero clash, and it actually goes a bit deeper than you think. Hero clashes are actually their own kind of XML object, which is basically the format in which the game stores all of its data about units. If we head into the file where hero clashes are stored, which is helpfully named heroclash.xml, in which you can open with Notepad or a bunch of other freely available programs, you can start to see how they work, and you'll also start to see why mods don't tend to have a wider variety of these. The way the Vader and Obi-Wan works is pretty simple. There's a list of hero types involved, while also having lines to classify the first and second hero, which as we'll see is probably the result of some changes in how they wanted to use these, since that information's kind of redundant. You don't really need the list if you have that pair. After that, each hero has a chance to win the exchange, with the damage per exchange being set just above that. So Vader has a much higher chance of winning than Obi-Wan, with both a higher base win chance per exchange and a higher damage multiplier for if he wins. It then lists 3 animations for each hero, one for when they win, one for when they lose, and one that's for a draw, with the animation sets for Obi-Wan and Vader being set up to mirror each other in these duels. But this also helps to show why mods don't tend to use them. If you wanted to set up a hero class for every possible combination of heroes in a mod, with most mods having a ton more heroes than base game, you'd need an XML entry for every possible combination, and you need to have appropriate animation sets for everyone. Mod teams being able to make their own infantry models is already rare enough, let alone making new animation sets that have this kind of fairly complicated animation between 2 different characters. But what you may not know is that hero clashes didn't actually stop there in the base game. Vader and Obi-Wan's may be the only one that actually made it to the release game, but there are actually 2 more in the code. There's one between Obi-Wan and Boba Fett, and a third one between Han, Chewie, and Boba. Part of why these don't work is because the engagement range is set to 0 to disable them, but they also have this same XML name, which is another factor in the game reading them properly. So if we change the name of the third one to something more appropriate and change the engagement range to be a bit higher on the second one between Obi-Wan and Boba, we can check out what it's going to look like in-game. But before we do that, let's take a look at how they work. Unlike the Obi-Wan and Vader one, it's not strictly a set of animations with a chance to win or lose an engagement. There are instead a bunch of action blocks set up in the code, with different triggers based on the distance or relative health of the heroes. These blocks tell the heroes to move around in different ways, or use different abilities, or just shoot differently. An Obi-Wan and Boba Fett hero clash may seem like a weird choice when they could have just done something like another duel between Obi-Wan and the Emperor, but Empire at War was being developed in the wake of Attack of the Clones release, so a lot of the setup here is done to mimic moves we see in the Kamino duel between Obi-Wan and Jango. Mostly it adds some built-in kiting for Boba, who has blocks to activate his jetpack and move around. The cleanest footage I have of this in action comes courtesy of Leo from the Empire at War Expanded team, who was also playing around with these recently, since he got a bit luckier than I did with having a bit more variety in the movements. In my own attempts, which were on some of the more cluttered maps, generally you can start to see why this particular one was cut. It's very easy for the movement blocks to mess up the heroes, and then suddenly Boba Fett is stuck in a tree. Or he starts breakdancing and just obliterates Obi-Wan so badly he can't like this video and subscribe for more. So I imagine that issue with reliability probably had an impact on why these were cut. You do lose control of the heroes in these clashes, so it may have been a bit frustrating to have your units jetting around without your consent and then getting stuck. The third one with Han, Chewie, and Boba is unfortunately not so easy to turn back on, other problems aside. This one seems to be more of a relic of an earlier time when the game's ground companies worked differently. The code has a comment saying Han and Chewie used to be listed in this as the vehicle thief team, so that was one object together, and so changes to how that's handled broke it, making this impossible to reactivate. These blocks have a bunch of running and gunning for all 3 characters, but since it doesn't seem possible to actually cover more than 2 characters in one type of clash, we'll never know what that might have looked like. That's all for now though. I hope you've enjoyed this look at one of the more obscure features in Empire at War. Thanks for watching.